Welcome to the Cloud OS Week Online. This is the thread for the people Centric IT, and we're going to talk about operation system deployment in Configuration Manager. Well, my name is Raphael Perez. I'm Microsoft MVP Enterprise Client Management, also MCT. I'm basically specialized in Configuration Manager and everything technology related with it. For example, Windows deployment, we talk about MDT, automation, patch management, and so on. I'm basically ex-developer, if exists anyone. I also wrote a book about Configuration Manager, and I'm one of the community leads for the desktop team. You can find more about me on the desktopteam.com, is where I blog a lot. Twitter at @Raphael. There's also my LinkedIn, as well as my email address. Well, the agenda for this video is basically the concepts we need to know, the basic we need to know, as well as we are going to look at a couple of demos. In terms of the concepts, if we get the whole OS deployment stuff, we have a few parts we need to be aware. First of all, boot image. What exactly is a boot image? Basically, it's a small Windows, let's say like that, we call Windows PE, that basically has the minimum part of the Windows that will allow you to boot the OS, have some video drivers, network drivers, and few other drivers, let's say hard drive and things like that, and allows you to connect to Configuration Manager. Then basically, as soon as there is the connectivity with Configuration Manager, then we can do many other things. Then we also have something called Operation System Image. It's basically the OS package in a Win format, basically the Windows imaging format. Now basically it's a large files in a Windows 7, Windows 8, we are talking about 2-3 gig files. We also have the Windows Setup Answer file. We are talking about XML file that's normally called unattended XML. That basically is going to have few informations about the OS we are going to deploy. For example, keyboard layout, time zone, and a few other stuff. We also have something called driver. Basically, driver, it's a computer software that connects to the hardware for the computer. As a user of the computer, we don't connect to the hardware. The OS allows you to connect to the hardware using drivers. We also have, in terms of the OS deployment, build and capture, the OS deployment itself, we have a few phases. One of the phases is called build and capture. Basically, it's the process to create a base image. Some people also know this as gold image, with the core applications, core software, and also software updates. In terms of the applications, if we put any on the base image or the gold image, are the applications that's not customized by the environment. For example, is the application that every single person in the whole company uses. We can easily say it's a 7-zip or WinZip, Office maybe. It's not subject to frequent updates. For example, if you think about the OS, we have the Microsoft Patch Tuesday, and we only update once a month. But if we think about, for example, Adobe Reader, Flash, Java, that we update often, almost once or twice a week, then those applications should not be put in the base image. And applications that will not be replaced by another application soon. For example, if you see your whole life cycle of the application, let's say Office 2013, is going to take a few years for your company to migrate to a new version of Office. Then this could be a good example to put in the base image. Another application that normally is good example to put in the base image, applications that take longer to install. Let's say .NET Framework 4, that sometimes take over an hour to be installed, then this is a good example. And also software updates. Any update that has been approved by your company should be in the gold image. If you are starting a new base image right now, you don't have any, for example, you are migrating from XP to Windows 8.1, you are going to get every single update and you put in the base image, because you probably don't have approval process for Windows 8.1 yet. After the build and capture that we are going to have a Win file or the Win image, the OS, we're going to deploy the deployment process. Basically, is deploy the gold image for our environment, and at this point we are going to have every single application that somehow need to be customized by my environment. What I mean by that is basically you are deploying applications per user or per group or per specific environment, not for the whole company. There are applications that subject to frequent updates, for example, Flash, Adobe Reader, Java, that often you always need to have the latest update. Then every time you deploy a new OS, you get the latest version. Also, any software update that's being approved but it's not in the gold image. Why these steps here? Basically, you perform the gold image or you create the gold image once every 3 to 6 months. Then what happens with those updates that need to be deployed? You deploy during the OS deployment. Also, in terms of configuration manager infrastructure, we have something called task sequence. Basically, it's a sequence of tasks that perform to automate the OS deployment. If we get a few examples that we do normally when we deploy, let's say, a new OS, we formatted the disk, we install the OS, we install any applications, we do software updates, we install drivers, and we copy files, and things like that we are going to put in the task sequence. Well, let's go here to our demo. Let's move it to my configuration manager, and we're going to see exactly how things work. Basically, before I talk about task sequence, the first thing we need to do is have boot image. I have a couple of boot images here. Basically, configuration manager brings you by default 2 boot images. One is 32 bits and one is 64 bits. Basically, 64 bits you deploy 64 bits operation system, 32 bits you deploy 32 bits OS. We also have here operation system images. Those are the images that we import the Win file. By default, I work in 2 different ways. I import the Win file from the DVD. For example, Windows 8.1, if I open the DVD, it's going to be there. If I go to my source files here, this here in the OS, I copy the install.win file from the DVD. Now, it's not something that I created. Now, I got from the the Windows DVD and I added here. Oh. The second thing I normally do, I update this using Configuration Manager. The reason I update is to update something, the updates called CBS. The CBS is the core updates that we can update offline. The reason I do this, there are a few updates that they require multiple reboots, and they sometimes doesn't work. Most of the times they don't work with Configuration Manager. Now what happened? I update here with every single update that I already downloaded through the software updates, and click here next, and allow the Configuration Manager to update that Win file. As soon as Configuration Manager do this for me, if I go back to my source files, I will have those 2 files. One basically is the RTM that I copied, and this one is the updated version. Then what is the next step? The next step for me would create task sequence. And if I show you my task sequence, I have 2 task sequences for each OS. I have a build-in capture. Let me open here my build-in capture, and I will show exactly what I do. And I also have the let me open the other one here. It doesn't matter if it's a Windows 7 or Windows 8.1 or Windows Vista. It's exactly the same you are doing with every single update, every single build-in capture. I have here the few steps. For example, restarting the Windows PE, partition disk, apply the operation system. As you can see, there are other steps I added on my task sequence. For example, copy files. We're going to see shortly. Okay, come back. I apologize. I'm not external connection a bit slow. Down here, I'm installing the Windows 8.1 Enterprise. I copy some files. Basically, it's like running a command line. Then apply the operation system. Then I have here local administrator password, time zone. Down here, I'm adding the computer to a work group, not the domain, because this is a built-in capture. Apply some drivers. Is the minimal drivers. In my environment here is a virtual, then there is no problem. Then I install actually the Windows and install Configuration Manager. And then I install Windows Updates. As you can see here, I have a few phases to install Windows Updates. And I have the applications. I'm installing a couple of applications. Oh, it's still loading here. And basically those applications is applications that every single machine in the whole organization is going to have. Now in this case here I have 7-zip, I have the Configuration Manager Toolkit, for example. And I perform other Windows updates just to be sure the machine is fully updated. And then at the end I prepare the Configuration Manager client, I prepare the OS, basically it's run sysprep, remove the client, prepare the client to be captured, and capture the reference image, my gold image, with every single customization. Customizations I added here, for example, I added a couple of information in the registry, and this is going to be used for my whole organization. As soon as I have this, I import the OS here again. Then I'm going to have, for example, Windows 8.1 built-in capture, and that one is going to be my base image. And the next step would be create a new task sequence to install. Now, as you can see here, there are a lot of customizations I do here. For example, set the language for the English GB, for the British keyboard, and install drivers and so on. But how exactly you do those stuffs? If I go back here, when I create a new task sequence, I have the option build and capture. Basically, let's say build capture Windows 8 MVP Cloud OS. My boot image is going to be the 64 bits because I'm going to use the 64 bits OS. Now we have here the Windows RTM Enterprise. I don't need to specify a product key, as well as I don't need to have the password, enable password. I normally enable when I'm doing tests. My network, we won't add to the domain now. Work group. My configuration manager, is being installing. Install Windows Update. I always install Windows Update. If I want to install any applications, just add the application here. Let's see that we have here, for example, the 7-zip, Catalyst Production. And here, system preparation. You can see here there is nothing because it's a Windows 8.1. Now every single file that needs is going to be there. Then some information about the file that we can import later on and where we are going to save this file. Let me put here in the capture. Now, Win 8.1 Win. And what account is going to have rights to access this folder? In my case here, I have if I'm not wrong, as build, and I have here the password. And basically it's next, and we finish. Let me just minimize here. And as soon as it finishes, we're going to have a new build in capture task sequence. And click close. And now if we go here, we have the Windows 8 bin capture. If I edit, we're going to see here that we have few informations. For example, partitioning, if it's a bio or UEFI, rebooting Windows PE, and so. As you can see, I haven't done any customization. It's almost out of the box everything that I need. It's exactly the same when you need to deploy a new OS. That is basically install existing image package. Now let's install Windows 8.1, for example. Let's use also the boot. The OS, let's use the one that we collect, but as soon as we did the whole process building capture, we would have another image here. In this case, we can out of the box prepare the environment for BitLocker. If you're going to use disk encryption for BitLocker, we can specify the product key. We can add it to the domain automatically here. We can select, for example, which OU we want. What's the account that's going to have rights to join the machine to the domain. What's the configuration manager client settings. If you want to migrate, for example, the information you are doing migration for the Windows XP to Windows 8, for example, you want to capture the user profile, restore the data. In this case, I remove. I don't want to capture. I want to install updates. And in this case, I will install some software. For example, we could use here Office. And every single time as we deploy this task sequence, every single person would receive the Office without any further customization. And here we have now the other task sequence. But if I want to do some customization, for example, driver for a specific model, I don't want to just every single driver. We can easily add steps to our task sequence. For example, driver. I could here apply driver package, and I would say here which driver I would apply. For example, surface. But how do I know which driver I need to apply to surface? In this case here, configuration manager in task sequence allows you to add conditions. For example, query WMI, or if it's specific software installed. For example, in terms of query WMI, I could say select start from Winter to computer system, where some information I don't recall from the back of my head. However, I already have this on another task sequence, and let's copy from there to be a bit and here if I scroll down somewhere, I have here the apply surface, and here we have the option I was talking that adds some customizations. And this we can do lots of extra information. For example, you could install a specific software. Let's get copy and paste there. You could, for example, install a specific software if the person is doing the OS deployment in a specific part of the environment. Now, the person is connected, for example, in a specific router. Then you can install extra drivers, or you can install extra software. Also, you can here run PowerShell scripts, run command lines. Now imagine every time you deploy a new OS, what exactly you do. Then basically you're going to see here for disk format, enable BitLocker. Now I could automatically enable BitLocker because on the Windows Configuration Manager 2012 R2, we are talking about Windows PE 5. We have this option here. By default, it's going to only enable the BitLocker for the used partition. Now, instead of force the whole disk to be encrypted and then continue the task sequence, is going to only enable start the BitLocker for the used disk space, and after that continue the task sequence. Then it's going to be faster. Or you can force to actually encrypt the whole drive, let's say for used machines instead of new machines, for example. What else we can add? We can use this option here to user state to capture and restore the user state, basically the user profile. Imagine that you have many people in Windows XP. You need to copy the data and restore the data. You can apply operation system, prepare the OS, or capture. It depends on what exactly you are doing. Here in settings, you can capture and restore network. This is more for server side, at least from my experience, where you need to collect the information from the machine. For example, this machine has a specific IP address. You need to restore the specific IP address. Well, that's it for this video. I hope this was really good. My details are in the video. If you want to know more about the desktop configuration management environment, check out my blog on the desktopteam.com, also Twitter and LinkedIn. And also don't forget to check the Cloud OS website and try to find out more about the MVP community on the MVP website. Thank you.